From the Ghost Tactical Productions studio, welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast. And now your host, Trey Miller.
Welcome, everybody. I am your host, Trey Miller with Ghost Tactical Productions, and today we've got a very special guest joining us. She is a wife, she is a mother, she is an author, she's an NRA board member, she's a veteran, and oh yeah, she does a little shooting on the side. She's only a multi-world and national champion across many different platforms of competitive shooting, but we have the very one and only Julie Golob. Thank you for joining us this week, Julie.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I know that you have a lot of things on your plate, and some of the stuff that I just read off were just the stuff that we know about as the general public. But I can't imagine what your schedule with now being a member of the NRA board and writing books and being a mom, and being a wife and obviously you're shooting. How hectic are your days?
Pretty hectic. I'm like a pretty meticulous planner. So I like to have things, scheduled out in advance, and I have to write everything down or I will always forget it.
Right.
But it's just a balancing act. When you become a parent, all of a sudden you develop these multitasking skills and sometimes you do well, sometimes you don't. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sink or swim.
Exactly. You have 3 different books. You have one that's more about competitive shooting. And then
Yes.
you have one that you wrote, I guess, when you were pregnant, about shooting while pregnant. And then, the book that came out last year or earlier this year, I think it was last December or something like that. And I read it before SHOT Show and all that. And it's more about safety for the kids. And I thought that was an awesome book. And we, I discussed it. We talked at SHOT Show, but just the fact that you actually are out there making it easier for parents to introduce gun safety to their children. How big of a role has that played since you have become a parent?
I think everything that I've done, whether it's blogging or writing books or videos, it represents just an era in my life. And I think it's one of those things, like, you can talk about how to talk to kids about guns, you can talk about shooting in competition, you can talk about all these things, but unless you're actually in it, living it, doing it, it's you don't have a perspective. And then when you do gain that perspective, if you can share it with others, it's really motivating. So, the series of books throughout my career have just been kind of, naturally happening as, I've become a shooter, become a mom and all of that. So it's fun and it's neat. And I'm glad that they can be a resource for people out there, because there's not a lot of it and it can be hard to find.
Right. And, kind of give some people some background that may not know your background. What age did you start shooting? What age did you start shooting competitively and all that?
Sure. I grew up shooting with my dad in upstate New York. I was a daddy's girl. I always ended up going to the range with him because I knew I would get a Happy Meal. That went way back. And eventually I really enjoyed the people there. It was the range was the one place that I was a kid, but people still respected me, if that makes sense. And so I fell in love with it working. And I didn't start competing until I was a teenager, when I was 14 years old. But by then I had this huge foundation of safety knowledge and experience from being a range officer on the range with Dad, that it was just like this natural progression. And I started shooting as a teenager and went to my first nationals as a junior in high school and was recruited to shoot for the Army. So that kind of laid the foundation for everything that's built up to today.
And that's a great little transition there, because I was going to bring up, the marksmanship unit with the Army. And a lot of people don't realize that, each individual branch has a shooting team. And when you said you were recruited by the Army to come shoot, can you maybe kind of go in a little bit depth as to what it's like to be part of a marksmanship unit, where you're pretty much practicing every day and then shooting competitions on weekends? Is that correct?
For the most part. I mean, I may or may not have painted a few rocks while I was there.
There you go. I understand that.
But what's really neat about the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit in particular is it is a dedicated unit. So if you are recruited, you're guaranteed, for me at least, I was guaranteed 1 year to prove that I could meet certain benchmarks. So it's one of those things that it's an incredible opportunity. Yes, you have lots of ammo. Yes, you have great instruction. Yes, you have a lot of range time, but you also have really tough gates. And if you aren't progressing as fast as you need to, you get to go join the regular Army in your original job, your MOS. So it's a lot of pressure, and your job is to compete and win. So you go into it going, all right, this is my investment. I'm going to, at least I did, like, here's my 5 years. I got to make it good, make them count.
Right.
And that's kind of how it worked for me. And the AMU is a little different now, obviously. I mean, I could have retired from the Army last year, so things have obviously progressed and changed. But wow, what an incredible place to teach marksmanship and have an example of how great the military and its teams can be through the different services.
Right. And so when you're with the marksmanship team, I mean, do you supply your guns? Do you get sponsors while you're in the Army? Or if they say, hey, I want to go shoot USPSA this week and I want to shoot my Smith & Wesson 2.0 or whatever, are they going to provide those guns? Or how does that, I mean, do you have your own private armor as well? I mean, or do you go through your unit armor? I mean, how does that work?
It's all in-house. I mean, if you don't have a personally owned weapon, a POW as they called it, then you basically have everything that you need supplied by the Army Marksmanship Unit. So there's a shop that does all the gunsmithing. There's an armor where you store all the firearms if you don't live off base. It's set up in a way so that at 18 years old, you're coming in, you can't carry a gun. You can't have a gun on base if you're not 21, or even at all in some cases. And so it's set up so that you're completely contained and able to get up in the morning, do your PT, physical training, and then head to the range, stopping at the unit before you go to grab your guns and any ammo.
So when you guys go to a match on a weekend or during the week or whatever, are you there? Do you get there a day or two early to practice, or do they allow you to do that? And then once you're there at the match, not only are you there representing the Army and you're shooting for your own personal pride and for the pride of the Army, but are you also out there looking for the next generation shooters as well, or how does that work?
So the way the AMU typically works is there is a very strict schedule that shooters adhere to. So on the action team, for example, they're going to outline the matches that you go to during the year. And for the most part in USPSA or IDPA or those types of sports, there is no practice day beforehand. So you literally just jump in the car or on the plane and go to a match. With precision pistol and NRA action pistol, a little different. But for the most part, it's, basically that's go time. You've trained all week. Now you're ready to hit the competition range, so to speak. And then of course you have a structure. You're not just running willy-nilly all over the place with your teammates. Right. There's a chain of command. So you have someone in charge that's either keeping an eye out for new talent, or sometimes there's not even an opportunity. There's no slots available. So it all depends on each specific team. When I was there, I think there were 7 different shooting teams. So you've got rifle teams, you've got pistol teams, you've got shotgun teams, and of course the armor in the shop. And it's even expanded beyond that to include Paralympic teams and stuff like that now. So it's pretty neat.
I want to transition a little bit into the competitive shooting side. And like you said, you started competitive shooting when you were 14. What did you start out with? Was it Steel Challenge? Was it, what all did you start out with when you say you first started at 14?
So USPSA or IPSA practical shooting, that's where I, cut my teeth on how to become a range officer. And so I knew all of the rules. I knew all the commands, and I watched my shooting heroes, my Rob Latham, Jerry Michlik, Kippy Latham shooting.
Now they're peers.
Exactly. It's kind of funny, but I even have photos of me when I'm little, being a range officer for Rob Latham, and we laugh because I'm like 4 feet tall, and of course Rob's very tall. He's a little heavier now.
A little bit, but, yeah, I'm sure.
It's all good times, and that's I fell in love with the sport because of the people. I enjoyed the structure of the range, and being a naturally competitive person, it was just the right fit.
Right. So I think it's amazing. You started when you were 14, and you basically said that you were a daddy's girl, and that's how you got it starting. Do your kids shoot? Are you introducing them into the world of competitive shooting? And does your husband shoot as well?
Yeah, my husband and I actually went on a few date matches before we got married, and he enjoys shooting. Mostly, he's more into the nostalgia stuff, so competition isn't completely his thing, but he does enjoy some of the divisions and shooting sports that I typically don't compete in, like precision rifle or
Right.
old school revolvers. He's very eclectic.
Well, I would imagine it's kind of an ego shot when you're dating someone and she's a world champion, and you probably don't want to go head to head with you. But was that an interesting dynamic? When did he know, obviously, when you went shooting, that you were who you are?
Definitely. We met
Okay.
because we even met at SHOT Show.
Okay, good.
So,
Cool. There you go. So he knew who
we
you
met
were.
that way. Yeah.
It was smart to stay away from all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And with my daughters, I have two. I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my 10-year-old has competed with me a number of times in rimfire events. And
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you what, that's really, it really comes together. You learn so much about being a good instructor and thinking about safety when you're dealing with younger junior competitors. So that's been a great learning experience for me. And my littlest one, she hasn't competed yet, but she does enjoy, shooting at some fruit and some candy canes and stuff like that. So she enjoys that.
Of course. And I've got some questions that some of my Patreon supporters sent to me to wanted me to ask you, if you don't mind. And one of them kind of goes into the kids shooting. It comes from Clover Tack, and he says, "What kind of advice do you give your daughter about competitive shooting that could translate to other kiddos?"
So one of the big things that I'm really focused on, because it's my job, because I'm a professional shooter, a lot of people, I get a little bit more attention in some places. I obviously have sponsors, and it's been extremely important for me to first and foremost stress safety. I will not, if she's not focused, if she's not, feeling it, and she's starting to make those little errors in firearm safety, we're done. We're done with the session for the day.
Right.
But the second thing is it's all about fun. It becomes a girls' weekend for us. It's mommy-daughter time, or sometimes she shoots with my husband. It becomes that exclusive, special experience. It's not a shared experience with her sibling. It's something that we do together. And if you can make it as fun as possible and as special as possible, that's the thing. We really need to avoid, the traditional dance mom kind of stuff that you
Wow.
see, because
Yeah.
it does trickle over into competition. Sometimes parents are a little too hard on their kids, and at the end of the day, it's not just about competing. This is a life skill. This is something that could potentially save their life. And so when you look at it from that angle, and not having a fear of firearms and having fun with them, that's one of the ways that I think is the best to go about it. And you got to remember too, this isn't a learning experience for you. I mean, if you're a parent and you're teaching your kids for the first time, I mean, you're all learning together. So,
Right. Right.
sometimes you just have to stop and say, okay, maybe I'm being too hard, or maybe I can say something or phrase it in a way that's going to be more effective.
Yeah. G-Webs, gun websites over there out on YouTube and all that, one of the original YouTube channels, says, "Is there any stage from any competition that stands out in your mind, that there's that stage that if you could shoot that stage over and over and over for the rest of your life, that was the one stage that you remember the most?"
There have been a couple of, when it all comes together perfectly, and there's no way that you could possibly, replicate it. And what's
Right.
really neat about competition is you always have that feeling, because your second run's always going to be better than your first run in your mind, right? And you only have one chance to do it. But there have been a few at nationals, especially, that I remember. I remember every single shot that I took on them, and the exact stage and my footwork and everything. But it doesn't happen that often.
I hear you. No, I understand.
Because, when
It's
you
never
think about
happened to me, so.
So, a handful of times. And more importantly, though, is I really try to remember the moments where I feel really good about either a course of fire or a really hard string or something, because I want to remember that, because it's a confidence builder later on. So if I see something similar, I'm like, no, you got this. I've done this before. This is easy peasy. And it helps settle the mind.
What are the coolest ranges? Do you have one particular range that all over the world that you've traveled? What's like the coolest range you ever shot at?
And hands down, there's an indoor range in Moscow, Russia,
Oh, cool.
and
Interesting.
you can shoot up buildings in this thing. I mean, it's like they had a
Wow.
2-story structure in there. It's absolutely incredible. And of course, it makes sense. Moscow's a little cold, and so
Yeah, a little bit.
yeah. And so to have an indoor facility that's almost like having an outdoor facility, and in some ways even better, is pretty neat. And it was definitely one of the most spectacular ranges. But you know what? We have a lot of really good ranges in the U.S. It doesn't have to be fancy. I like a good tall berm, and something that's easy to get around on. I prefer regular grass instead of gravel and that sort of thing. But
Right.
at the end of the day, you got a backstop and a place to shoot. I'm happy.
Now, the next question that I kind of want to talk about is the perception of America and guns when you are traveling worldwide. Now, obviously, you're going to be around gun people even overseas, but is there a wild, wild west perception that a lot of people have of us with our guns in America?
I wouldn't say, mostly the traveling that I've done has been competition shooting and pro gun. I think the biggest sentiment that comes across is how accessible it is. I mean, when you look at international shooting competitions and shooting sports, the vast majority of the competitors that are shooting in them have a significant, well, they're usually wealthy. Let's just be,
Sure.
frank
Yeah.
about it.
Sure.
And because the taxes that you have to pay on firearms and ammunition, and the accessibility for ranges, that usually comes with, somebody who's doing pretty well.
Right.
Whereas in the U.S., I mean, you can be, middle class America and be a world champion.
That's right.
And that's really neat. So there's a little bit of envy there. It all comes with the fact that, we do have the Second Amendment. We do have the ability to shoot at different, all sorts of different competitions. So, it's more of like, wow, what would it be like to live in America, to be able to do all this stuff, and you only have to pay that much for ammo? Wow, kind of thing.
Right. In other countries, a lot of people hear us and say, well, man, I wish we wouldn't have to do that. It's kind of messed up. We have to go fill out paperwork and we have to wait 10 days in California and all that. And I'll say to every now and then, as bad as you think it is here, try going to Australia. Try going to these other countries where it might take you a year. It might take us a year to get a stamp for a suppressor or an SBR or whatever, but it might take a year or two to get a license to own a firearm, because you have to prove that's for a specific reason. And then the types of firearms, you may not be able to get a semi-automatic pistol. It might be a bolt action rifle. And so I always say, as bad as you think we have it here in America, we're really, even today, we're still pretty good on gun control, lack of gun control, and being accessible to everyone, whether you can go down to the gun shop and get $100 trade-in or something, to where anyone can buy a firearm. That other countries, they look at us and say, man, they complain a lot over in America, but I'd love to be over there. So I wonder how that dynamic was.
Yeah, it's I think perspective is a valuable thing to have, and there's a lot of learning lessons. What seems to sound reasonable overseas, we have case studies like, well, guess what? It didn't do anything for you. It didn't help you. And so that's very valuable ammunition, pun intended, for us when we are battling these gun control debates and battles across the U.S. and in the States. So it's hard, but at the same time, the more supportive we are of shooters abroad who are able to compete and carry the torch and do good things with firearms, the better.
Now, you have gotten into the political arena to a certain extent. You're not running for office as far as a legislator, but you did join the NRA board this year. And can you kind of go into the process of, were you approached by someone, or did you feel the obligation to do that? Or how did the whole idea of, I think I'll try to run for NRA board?
So I really kind of received the best of all worlds in that sense. Obviously, I've been supportive in the NRA and the Second Amendment. I've been a benefactor member forever. But I was actually nominated by the NRA board's nominating committee. So they look at people outside of the current board members and within, and they make recommendations on who they think would be a good board member. And so when I received the call that I was like, oh, would you like to be nominated? And it was like one of those things that I had honestly never even thought about, because I don't know. I mean, it's like being on the board of directors for a major company. It's not something that you really think about as just, somebody who's, like a purchaser or somebody who's like, go team kind of thing.
Right.
So it's been eye-opening.
I
It's
bet it has.
my first foray into politics. I think that the biggest pro and con at the same time is, being a sounding board. In a lot of ways, that makes me be able to give a perspective and be helpful. But a lot of people only think of their NRA as it pertains to them and not the big
Right.
picture. And so that's my greatest challenge, to say, oh yes, I hear you, I do understand. But did you know that though, you may not like getting a phone call from the NRA, but they're very effective for others.
Right.
So
No, you're right. Yeah.
it's one of those things, when you look at the big picture, it changes things. And people care about what they care about specifically, but that's been my greatest challenge with it all. But it's been really neat. And you hear all these things about, oh, the NRA board, they're a bunch of old guys and they're mean and they're but they're they're kind, amazing, passionate people who volunteer. I mean, this is a volunteer thing. Nobody's getting paid.
Exactly. And I remember, it was maybe April or something like that. And I got an email from you, and it was leading up to the NRA meetings, and, asked my opinion, NRA and all that. And I think I've been very vocal with, I do not agree with a lot of the stuff that the NRA is doing as a whole, which I'm sure you get a lot. But I thought it was nice for you to sit there and say, what exactly are you disliking? And then you and I had a back and forth with several emails and talking about, well, here's what we'd like to do, and here's maybe something that can be brought up in the meetings, and there are things that's what we need to go into their meetings, knowing that here's what not only people are maybe not happy with this, but here's what they're unhappy about, and here's why. And so I think that is an awesome thing. So I appreciate the fact that I'm sure you reached out to many, 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 many people, but the fact that you get an email from someone who's an NRA board member who seems to genuinely care about some of the disgruntled feelings that we have towards them. And it may be, and I told people before, I said, just because I dropped my membership of the NRA doesn't mean that I'm never going to come back. It just right now, it's one of those things where I want to see what they're going to do with this. I want to see where they're going to go. And for me, I think in the email, the joint statement between Cox and LaPierre back in October on the bump stock, that was a reactionary comment, I'm sure, but that resonated with me. It was like, whoa, you're actually asking the ATF to look at something, and that kind of upset me and all that. So I'm, you're beyond that. You're not part of that. I do appreciate the fact that you reached out and were looking for insight, because that means a lot. That's the first time that I've ever been contacted by an NRA board member to ask why, maybe I'm not happy. So I thought that was really cool. And I'm sure everyone else that you sent the email to appreciate that as well.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a delicate balance, and ultimately your membership and your membership dollars come down to how you feel, and it's a delicate balance between some people who want one extreme and some people that want another. And with 6 million members,
Right.
I mean, we can't even agree on where to eat at a restaurant. Betcha.
Exactly. Well, I think a lot of it is the split between the ILA and the NRA. Some people think that it's all one, and to a certain extent it is. But the ILA is the legislative strong arm of the NRA side, and then you also have the side of the NRA that I think that people still love and really hold dear to their hearts, is the instruction. The youth side of safety. So the training and all that, I think that's the side that a lot of people really, really care about the NRA. But unfortunately, what we hear and see from the NRA is what actually is the ILA. And I think a lot of people may not be able to distinguish between the two.
Yeah, it's, there are certainly, moments where, I'm not going to agree with what everybody says or whatever things,
That's a
but
good thing. That's a good thing.
Yes, exactly. But at the end of the day, I know, and the reason why I agreed to even run is the fact that, the NRA is the lead organization here when it comes to defending our rights. And I want to be a part of anything I can to, preserve that heritage for my girls and for other people as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've got 2 years left, and what I can do.
I hope you're still enjoying that aspect of your life. I know that the NRA is also the NRA Women. You're involved, and I think it's season 4 or 5. I think it's season 5.
Yes, season 5.
Of Love at First Shot. You and Natalie Foster kind of, I guess you're the co-host or you're kind of running this. How does that, it's a great thing where if people aren't familiar with it, you've got 4 professional competitive shooters paired up with 4, or actually 1 and 1, but there's 4 competitive and 4 amateur shooters. And is it kind of like a top shot type thing? I mean, how would you explain it to people? Because I think it's fascinating, not only to bring more women in, but I think it's amazing that you're doing professional and amateur teamed up together.
Yeah, it's basically Pro-Am meets Top Shot. So
Awesome.
it's really neat because you see, people who have women who have a ton of experience in the competition world paired up with somebody who, in some cases, shot once before.
Right.
So they're able to take them. It's not going to be one of those shows where you're like, oh yeah, this is the fastest time in the world kind of thing. But you're going to see women grow and get excited, and it's all around firearms and being safe and having fun with them. So it is it is, I think, the single most I've always dreamed of being a part of Top Shot in a certain
Right.
way. But so to be able to create all of the challenges and to, put little fun twists that you normally wouldn't see in the competition and keep the pros guessing, but also still encourage the amateurs, it's something I'm really, really proud of.
For lack of a better term, it's really introducing firearms to some of these kids. And like you said, I think it's amazing with Love at First Shot that, like you said, there are some girls that have shot a gun once, and she's being paired with a professional shooter. And so I think the dynamic of that and being mentors and leading them the right way, the safe way through firearms journey is amazing.
It's one of those things where you're representing a broad segment of, we have a college student, we have moms, we have, professional instructors, and a woman who just runs social media.
There you go.
There's a way, it's a way to connect women from all walks of life to say, hey, look, she's doing it, you can try this too, especially if you know how to say, hey, this is what I want to learn, who do I need to go to. It can be a really productive thing, and that's what we need more women involved, and we need to empower more women. I know that's such a cliche thing, but there's nothing more that makes us equal than across the board being able to defend ourselves and in what we believe in.
No doubt. And being captain of Team Smith and Wesson and all the stuff that you are involved in, being kind of at the pedestal and the pinnacle of your field as a woman with a burden of feeling like maybe you have to, whether you want to or not, sometimes be the activist for women in firearms. Is that a difficult task sometimes?
I don't even think of it that way.
Oh, good. Good.
The neat thing about what I do, and I try very hard to stay accessible to as many people as possible, is just, to take the first step. Because if somebody steps first, then somebody else will follow. And that's exactly what has happened. It's what happened to me. I mean, I was that little junior competitor, and I was watching people like Kay Clark, Mitchlick,
Right.
and Kippy Latham and Sheila Bray. And I'm like, you know what? They took the first steps. Annie Oakley took the first steps. Let's be
Right.
honest.
Right. Let's
And,
let's
and so,
exactly.
when we have these women to look up to, I don't think of myself as the end all be all. I just think of, I'm one of many, and that's the really neat thing. And we just got to keep growing.
Is there any advice that you could give to guys out there that might be dating someone or their wife that have historically not been involved or interested in shooting? Is there any advice that you could give to the guys out there that might have the women in their lives or interested possibly into getting to shooting? What kind of advice would you give them?
So you got to treat it like your first dating her.
Oh, there you go. I like it. I like
You
it.
have to think about, instead of saying, hey, you need to do this with me, or what, I want you to go do this, come to a match with me, or I want to, just shoot this, whatever. The best thing you can do is to say something, I want to share this experience with you. I want us to do this together as a way to be together. And when you look at it from that perspective, you look at the amazing couples in the shooting world that are doing it because they love to do it, not because they want to compete with each other, not because they want to tell each other what they want to do, but it's another way they can spend time that they enjoy together. And you're never going to know until you take that first step. So be as gentle and kind with that first step as possible, and think of it like, this is, you want to win her over, and you want to win this person over. What's the best way to do it?
Right. And since you've been involved, you were the Army Female Athlete of the Year, so you kind of already been boosted up and people knew who you were. But when you made a transition to a full-time professional shooter and, you start becoming, you're writing the books and all of that. How has the industry changed in regards to women since you kind of first started?
What I love about the industry in particular is it's becoming less about women's only products. It becomes more about, how can this be modular? Nothing is one size fits all anymore. And we're looking at different grip sizes, not just for women, but for everybody. We're thinking of all of the things that come into the big picture to make a better product, to make a better offering for everyone. And that is what I like to see. I'm not a big shrink it and pink it fan, to say the least.
Right.
But I respect the fact that some women like pink, and so I think there's a delicate balance. But when you have a product that works for everybody because you've been thoughtful and you are considering those things, I mean, I feel like we're really hitting that point in the industry today, and it's exciting.
For women, and I'm not saying just girls, but let's say women in general, any age, that are interested in getting into competitive shooting. They've been introduced to firearms, or they go to the range all the time, they practice, and they think they're ready to take maybe that next step of competitive shooting. What's maybe a tip that you can give the women to help them start getting into competitive shooting?
Just go for it. Do a little bit of research on the internet, figure out what's around you. That's one of the best places to start, and go from there. You're going to find that the shooting sports are so welcoming. You can email me. You can email a lot of different women in the sports, and it's a really wonderful opportunity. That don't be shy or timid about it. Just go out and do it.
As a whole, where do you think that the state of the gun industry is? Are you worried about the midterm elections where there could be some legislation coming on? Are you hopeful, and are you positive about where the gun community is, or where do you think that we are right now?
I never want to take what we have for granted. And so I fear the times that we become complacent because we have, a president that's supportive of gun rights more so than we've had. We have a Supreme Court situation that's, a whole lot different than it was. It does. But I feel that we have a greater mission. And that is beyond just what we do when we head to the polls. Yes, we need to vote. Yes, we need to be informed. But we also need to expand, and we need to think about ways to encourage and inspire other people to see our way of life. And when that happens, there's a different perspective. It goes beyond, arguing a point on Facebook. It goes beyond, having a debate on Twitter. It comes down to sharing your passion, sharing your sport, sharing your ideals in a way that is encouraging and welcoming and opens the door for real conversation.
Absolutely. I've said on a lot of my live shows and in different videos that, my number one goal as far as the Second Amendment is to show daily by caring every day. If we can kind of show them every day that we are normal people with normal jobs, with normal lives, there are law-abiding citizens, then maybe we start changing some minds to think well, man, I didn't know that you carry a gun. I carry a gun every day. You just can't see it. Yes. And you've liked me for the last 15 years. So what's changed now?
Yes.
Well, you're a gun guy. Am I? Or just am I a normal citizen that happens to carry a gun? So I think that's really big. And I love what you just said there, that changing people's minds starts with just normal, simple, everyday stuff.
Yep, it does. And I think that the key is don't go into it to hope to change their mind. Go into it to open their mind. And that's
a great point. That's a great point. I've got a couple rapid fire questions that I always ask my guests, if you don't mind. Let's first one is do you carry?
Yes.
What's your favorite carry gun?
The M&P Shield M2.0 in 9mm.
There you go. I carry the Shield 9mm. 95% of the time I carry the Shield. I actually picked up a Walther PPQ subcompact last week. And so for the last week, I've tried to carry it, and I enjoy it. But 95% of the time, it is my Shield, which is, I've told people, it's very well could go down as the greatest carry gun of all time. It's sleek. It's still got a power punch, but it's great. Which is your favorite gun that you have in your arsenal?
Oh gosh, I hate this question. It's like I always say this. It's like asking a girl her favorite pair of shoes.
Exactly.
It depends on the outfit.
Please, which kid do you like better?
I know. It's like it depends on what I'm using it for. So at the moment, I am loving my. I have a new setup for I'm using 224 Valkyrie with federal
really?
premiums and stuff. So I custom built an M&P 15 with a JP Enterprise upper, and it's the match season is over, so it's like my fun gun time. So
Right. If there's one gun out there, historical gun, modern gun, whatever it is, price is not an issue, ammo costs are not an issue, NFA is not an issue. What's the one dream gun? If there's one thing out there that you said, man, if I ever have $1 million and I could get through the NFA and all of that stuff and everything's good to go, whatever it is, what's the one gun, the dream gun that Julie Golob would like to have?
Can I have two?
Absolutely, you can.
All right. So one, I gotta have a Gatling gun. I've never shot one.
Oh yeah.
I want one. I think they're beautiful, and what a piece of history, right?
Right.
And
right.
the second would be Annie Oakley's 22 rifle. And
oh wow! Like actually her rifle.
I would love it. There's obviously artifacts, and if you have a
Sure.
chance to go to NRA Museum and check out all the firearms there, I mean, it's hard to pick just one, but I would love that, and just that would be amazing.
Talking about a literal, priceless artifact right there.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
priceless.
Yes.
Yeah,
That'd be pretty special.
That would be really, really special.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, I certainly appreciate you joining the podcast. I know that you are busy. I want to give you a few minutes, should you wish to, talk about any projects that you want to promote, websites, books, anything like that. Please take a few minutes to tell everybody where they can find you and all of that stuff.
My pleasure. Everything and all of my life is pretty much at juliegolob.com. I share all my social media stuff there as well. But for the most part, I'm just trucking along, hopefully doing the best I can for the NRA, for shooting sports in general. And I do plan to have a Spanish version of my children's book coming out in
Really?
Christmas. So yeah, so it's one of those things that's I'm really excited about. Gabby Franco, of course, of Top Shot fame.
Oh yeah.
It has helped me translate the main portion of the book, and then I've also had a wonderful person from Guatemala reach out to me to finish the rest of it. So hopefully, with any luck,
Awesome.
it'll be out in time for holidays.
Now, do you have plans for another book, maybe?
The next one that I have been asked to finish, I certainly have compiled a few things. Is a cookbook, so we'll see about that.
Love it. I love it. Well, Julie, thank you so much. Guys, please go out and check out www.juliegolob.com, where you can find all of their social media, all of her books, everything that you could possibly want to know and see about Julie is on there. Julie, you are a wonderful ambassador to the shooting sports for women, for kids, for the NRA, and I truly thank you for coming on the podcast. And oh, by the way, everything else, the 27 other things that you got going in your life. So thank you for taking time out of your busy life to join us.
No, my pleasure. And thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Armed Citizen Podcast. To check out our full lineup of pro-gun media content, including our product reviews, live shows, and other Second Amendment activity, please check out our website, www.ghosttacticalproductions.com.